Martin Luther King a martyr? You're going to hear that name a lot today, Trayvon Martin Luther King. Okay, from CBS, Eyeball News in Washington. Would Martin Luther King Jr. support Obamacare? Well, the president thinks so. The president was on, and do we have, I think we do. I think we've got sound bites of this. Let's start with number 7. This is Barack yesterday on the radio. Tom Joyner in the morning talking about the MLK event, and Joyner said, "What do you think that Martin Luther King Jr. would say about Obamacare?" Now here's the thing: Martin Luther King Jr. can now be used to promote anything, and in the process, I think if these people on the left are not careful, they're going to end up diminishing this man. They're going to commercialize this man and this speech. And they're going to turn him and what he stood for into a commodity. I mean, they're dangerously close to commoditizing this now. But I think this is the height of self-absorption. To have the President of the United States, what would Dr. King think of Obamacare? You know, based on what I have read of Dr. King, let me just say something here. Dr. King said a lot of things besides this speech. Dr. King, and Eric Erickson quotes him in redstate.com. Eric, in a post today, cites his favorite Martin Luther King speech, and I'm just going to paraphrase it here. I don't have the thing in front of me. But he said that in one of his favorite Dr. King speeches, Martin Luther King made the point, no matter what you do it the best it's ever been done. If you're the street sweeper, if your job is sweeping the streets, you sweep those streets the way Michelangelo used a paintbrush. You be the best you can be at it. That is your job here. And you meet up on the right side of God at the end of your life. You live your life in a productive, be the best you can every day kind of way. And you meet up with God at the end of your life. And that's just square the deal. Now, I have to tell you, I think a man who believed that no work was illegitimate, that no work was beneath anybody, and that all work was such that it should be done the best it can be. I do not think that kind of guy would sit there and be open to the idea of the government taking care of everybody. If I were a devout follower of Martin Luther King, the question alone would bother me. Why stop there? What would Dr. King say about Benghazi? What would Dr. King think of Obama's golf handicap? What would he think of black unemployment today? We kind of know that because his son, Martin Luther King III, has weighed in on it, and he's not happy about it. What would Dr. King think of Barack Obama stripping African-American students school vouchers in Washington within the first 6 months of his presidency? What would Dr. King think of Michelle Obama trying to determine everybody's lunch menu at every school in America and traveling on her own government jet to Spain with her own entourage for a vacation? What would Dr. King think of Reverend Wright? What would Dr. King think of President Obama sitting in a pew in Reverend Wright's church for 20 years and then saying, I didn't hear him say that? They're commoditizing this man. They're turning him into a billboard, an advertisement. You can now use Martin Luther King to promote or sell anything. So here's Obama's answer to Tom Joyner's question: what would Obamacare? What would Martin Luther King thought of Obamacare?
Oh, he'd like that. Well, because I think he understood that health care, health security, is not a privilege. It's something that a country as wealthy as ours, everybody should have access to.
I think he'd probably think it's something everybody should try to provide for themselves. I mean, if Martin Luther King is a man who can say, if your lot in life is to sweep the streets, and you do it the best you can. You sweep the streets the way Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel. Whatever your job is, if it's taking out the garbage, you make wherever you're taking out the garbage the cleanest place in the world. A man who could tell people that no work was beneath anybody, there was no dishonor in any work. To do the best you can every day, max out, and then square up with God at the end of your life. What would this man think of everybody being given a telephone? What would he think of 50 million Americans on food stamps? And look at what's happening. Whatever question the Democrats want to ask about Martin Luther King, guess what? He would totally support whatever the Democrat Party is doing and believes. What would Dr. King think of 95% of black high school graduates unable to pass a standardized test? What would he think of the dropout rate, African-American dropout rate in New York City being 50%? What would he think of the fact that 73% of African-American kids are born to a single-parent family? Oh, he'd be all for this, Rush. He'd understand why it's happening. He'd understand the Republicans are making this. What would Dr. King think of all of the African-American babies being aborted every year? You know, this is a. I really think it's a near crime what is being done here, to take the occasion of this man's great address and what he stood for and basically hijack it for President Barack Obama. I would think if I were President Obama, I'd be a little embarrassed I can't stand on my own. I'd be a little embarrassed that I have to have a bunch of people that say, oh, yeah, Dr. King would be all for this. Oh, yeah, Dr. King would be 100% in on this. Oh, yeah. It's just amazing to me. I don't know. What would Dr. King think of Obama's election year support of gay marriage? Dr. King was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He was, among many other things, a man of the cloth. So he's being hijacked. And people who cannot possibly answer these questions are presumed